In the midst of sorrow, you can see up and looking down. The right of day to sorrow will bring. Oh, you hear the voice of freedom. Minutes can never be down. No matter how hard reality seems, just hold on to the dream. Yeah. You can win as long as you keep your head to the sky. Indeed. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Live from our nation's capital, you're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, your host and chief national political analyst for KBLA Talk 1580. I'm in touch until you be in touch. Follow me on all the social media platforms at Dr. Nii-Quartelai. That's DrNiiQuartelai. Pro tip, just type in Dr. Nee, and there I am. Also, download the KBLA app to listen to us live or on demand, or simply tell Alexa to play KBLA Talk 1580. And for your listening pleasure, there we are. Finally, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to A More Perfect Union podcast. That way you'll never, ever, ever miss an episode. And if you're subscribed, that's great. We thank you. But turn to your neighbor, as some might say, and encourage them to also subscribe to A More Perfect Union podcast. Because guess what? Each and every day, sometimes even up to the moment before we go on air, we are curating your best political digest for the day's news. It's news that we believe you need to know, and we enjoy doing it. Speaking of news, now it's time for our national news roundup. It's time for the good, bad, and ugly headlines of the day. And kicking us off, hacked data reveals which U.S. gun sellers are behind Mexican cartel violence. USA Today is reporting that a massive leak of Mexican military intelligence is exposed for the first time in 2 decades U.S. gun shops and smugglers tied to 78,000 firearms recovered south of the border, and which types of guns are being trafficked. The nuggets of information are among roughly 10 million records hacked by an anonymous collective known as Guacamaya and shared with news outlets by the transparency organization Distributed Denial of Secrets, or DDU Secrets. The Mexican Defense Ministry leak previously made headlines for exposing military corruption and surveillance abuse, and now reveals that the traced data on American-sold firearms recovered since 2018. So despite efforts to stem the flow, these American firearms are smuggled south as a part of the cycle of Latin American narcotics headed north. The violence in Central America, fueled in part by guns, also has contributed to the migration crisis at the U.S. border. As part of this leak, emails relaying U.S. government data between Mexican military leaders and PowerPoint presentations by Mexico's Attorney General it shows which American straw buyers were tied to the most weapons as of 2022. We know that 66% of those firearms were recovered in Mexico, and we're talking about semi-automatic rifles, among other arms. And so this is a pretty detailed investigative report provided exclusively by USA Today. And it's not every day you hear about a massive data leak that ties names of American shops and buyers to thousands of guns recovered at Mexican crime scenes. And so, uh, 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 who knows where this is going to lead in terms of the movement around gun violence prevention. But that was a pretty big story reported today by USA Today. In other big news, Fani Willis and presiding judge in the Trump Georgia case have won their elections. The Washington Post is reporting that two of the most prominent figures in the Georgia criminal case against former President Trump easily won their respective elections on Tuesday, in their first appearance on the ballot since the inception of the high-profile election interference case. Fulton County District Attorney Fani T. Willis defeated challenger Christian Wise Smith in Georgia's Democratic primary as she seeks another 4-year term as Atlanta's top prosecutor. This is according to projections from the Associated Press. Meanwhile, Fulton County Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee, who's presiding over the election case, was elected to his first full term since being appointed to the court last year, defeating challenger Robert Patillo. This is also according to the Associated Press. And so, for all of the memes out there and all the social media chatter, it looks like Fani Willis and Judge McAfee have won this primary election and are in good position to win again in November. Moving along, when I saw this, I was a little bit shocked by this. I don't know, you may be a little less shocked. The Associated Press is reporting that daily marijuana use outpaces daily drinking in the United States. That's what a new study is saying. Millions of people in the U.S. report using marijuana daily or nearly every day. It's according to an analysis of the national survey data. And those people now outnumber those who say they are daily or nearly daily drinkers of alcohol. Ain't that something? Alcohol is still more widely used, but 2022 was the first time this intensive level of marijuana use overtook daily and near daily drinking. It's according to the study's author, Jonathan Calkins, who's a cannabis policy researcher at Carnegie Mellon University. He says that, quotes, around 40% of current cannabis users are using it daily or nearly daily, a pattern that is more associated with tobacco use than typical alcohol use. The research, based on data from the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, was published today in the journal Addiction. The survey is a highly regarded source of self-reported estimates of tobacco, alcohol, and drug use in the United States. I want to remind you that in 2022, an estimated 17.7 million people reported using marijuana daily or near daily, compared to 14.7 million daily or near daily drinkers, according to the study. And so, folks are getting their marijuana use in. And I wonder how much of this has to do with the fact that, marijuana comes in so many different forms. And so what wasn't clear to me, at least in this article, is, how many people were, smoking marijuana versus, maybe using cannabis oil, maybe doing gummies, maybe, consuming marijuana in different forms, right? And so who knows, maybe that is a part of the next study, or maybe they just haven't published that information yet. But it's an interesting turn of events, that more folks are reaching for the ganja than reaching for that cocktail. Anywho, in other news, we know that the USA Today is also giving us an update on this continued saga that is the Diddy case, where a former model has sued Sean Diddy Combs, claiming that he drugged and sexually assaulted her in 2003. The embattled music mogul Sean Diddy Combs has been accused of drugging and sexually assaulting a young model in the early 2000s in a lawsuit filed Tuesday in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York. Crystal McKinney alleges that Diddy, then 34, assaulted the 22-year-old model at his New York City studio in 2003 and forced her to perform oral sex. McKinney also claimed that the hip-hop icon derailed her career by having her blackballed in the modeling industry despite earlier promising to help her professionally. The ordeal purportedly led to a decline in McKinney's mental health, including bouts of depression, anxiety, body image issues, feeling of worthlessness, and intimacy issues. In recent months, Combs, who's now 54, has faced a series of sexual assault lawsuits alleging that he raped or sexually assaulted multiple women over the past few decades. And in March, his LA home was raided by Homeland Security investigation agents, reportedly in connection with an ongoing sex trafficking investigation in New York. And amid campus protests, organizers with past ties to Hamas support also emerged. USA Today is reporting that on day 7 of the pro-Palestinian protest on Columbia University's campus, Osama Abushayed stopped by the student encampment. The executive director of the American Muslims for Palestine walked through the tent city, then made a fiery speech to the gathered crowd. And 48 hours later, Abushayed appeared at another campus, George Washington University in Washington, D.C., where he delivered another speech. Campus protests, which swept the country this spring, emerged as an outcry over the civilian death toll of the military campaign that Israel launched in response to Hamas's October 7th attack. Most student protesters have sought to distance themselves from Hamas, which the United States designated as a terrorist entity back in 1997. But top members of Abushayed's organization have complex connections to campus protest movements. And Abushayed and others from the American Muslims for Palestine were once employees or officials at another group tied to direct financial support from Hamas. That's what USA Today has found and reported on. We encourage people to sort of check out that article. And, many things can be true. Folks, might have some protesters may indeed have ties to Hamas. A lot of protesters may not have ties at all. But that's what this report has found, some ties between this particular protester and Hamas. And so I suspect people will be looking into that. When we come forward, I'll be joined with Steve Benjamin. He is the White House Director of Public Engagement. He's also the former mayor of Columbia, South Carolina, and he's got a big announcement to share from President Biden today. If you are concerned about our nation's courts and our ability to be able to get fair and just rulings from the courts, you don't want to miss this announcement that Steve Benjamin has to share. More when we come forward. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward, includes you. KBLA Talk 1580, turning pain into power.
Tavis Smiley here. We're getting closer to June 18th, and time is running out for you to register to join us for our historic symposium live on C-SPAN, Tuesday, June 18th, 4 to 7 p.m. at the California Science Center in Exposition Park. Admission is free, but you must register at KBLA1580.com right now if you want to be in the audience when the nation will see for the first time ever a stage full of brilliant Black folk talking about the urgency of now. Climate justice, climate equity, climate resilience. It's all going down. Well, it's actually all going up. Tuesday, June 18th, 4 to 7 p.m., live from the California Science Center in Exposition Park. Again, admission is free, but we're filling up fast. So if I were you, I would log on right now to KBLA1580.com to reserve your seat. Caring about the climate, caring about the community. We're KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Did you know that feeling sluggish or weighed down could be a sign that your digestive system isn't working at its best? Taking Metamucil every day can help. Metamucil fiber powders help promote your daily digestive health using a plant-based fiber called psyllium. The gelling action of this special fiber traps and removes waste, so you can feel lighter and more energetic. Metamucil, promoting digestive health for a better you. Learn more at metamucil.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
When you use Bounce dryer sheets and your clothes look amazing, it's the sheet. Less static in your life? Yeah, it's the sheet. Smelling fresher than ever? It's the sheet. Oh, so soft fabric? Ooh la la. It's the sheet. Less wrinkles on your clothes? You know it's the sheet. Bounce dryer sheets. More freshness, more softness. Less static, less wrinkles. It's the sheet.
We knew you'd stick around. This is LA's home for Progressive Talk Radio. Welcome back to KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. Quartey, and delighted to welcome back to the show former Columbia, South Carolina Mayor, current Director of the White House Office of Public Engagement, Steve Benjamin. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we're pleased to have you here, and we're pleased to make sure that we're. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey. We are going to play for you that conversation I have with Steve Benjamin, the former mayor of Columbia, South Carolina. He's also the White House Director of Public Engagement. We're going to play that for you in just a little bit, but first, we want to dig a little bit deeper into some of today's headlines. Our hearts continue to go out to the families of the victims of the Uvalde school shooting. And as if that wasn't enough, as if that tragedy wasn't enough, now they have to take their fight to the courts. The families of the Uvalde school shooting victims are suing Texas State Police over a botched response. The families of 19 of the victims in the Uvalde elementary school shooting in Texas on Wednesday, just today, announced a $500 million federal lawsuit against nearly 100 state police officers who were part of the botched law enforcement response to one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history. The family said that they also agreed to a $2 million settlement with the city, under which the city leaders promised higher standards and better training for local police. The announcement in Uvalde came just 2 days before the 2-year anniversary of the massacre. 19 fourth graders, 19 fourth graders and 2 teachers were killed on May 24th, 2022, when a teenage gunman burst into their classroom at Robb Elementary School and began shooting. The lawsuit seeks at least $500 million in damages. It's the latest of several seeking accountability of the law enforcement response, and more than 370 federal, state, and local officers converged on the scene, but they waited more than 70 minutes before confronting the shooter. It is the first lawsuit to be filed after a 600-page Justice Department report was released in January that cataloged cascading failures in training, communication, leadership, and technology problems on that day. This will by no means be easy. God Godspeed to the families of the Uvalde victims for summoning the stomach and the courage to move forward with such a lawsuit. We'll be sure to keep everybody here updated as that case continues to develop. And in other news, when it comes to our kids not being all right, fentanyl is fueling a record number of youth drug deaths. The Washington Post is reporting that fentanyl, which is a pervasive killer in America's illicit drug supply, is increasingly landing in the hands of teens, particularly across the DC, Maryland, Virginia region of the nation, worrying providers who say that treatment options for youth are limited. But across the country, fentanyl has largely fueled a more than doubling of overdose deaths among children ages 12 to 17 since the start of the pandemic. And this is according to an analysis by the Washington Post and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. This is some data that was released just this month. Fatal overdoses in DC, Maryland, and Virginia are in keeping with the national increase in opioid fatalities, which until recently primarily claimed the lives of adults. You see, in 2022, 45 teens succumbed to opioids locally. That's a number roughly equal to the previous 3 years combined. And incomplete data from 2023 shows no sign of the crisis abating in young people. We know that physicians at area hospitals report a rise in young people who took opioids arriving to emergency rooms, and local addiction specialists saying that the number of teens seeking help for opioid use is spiking, especially among Latinos. And so we shouldn't turn away. We can't turn away. We know that many pediatricians surveyed nationwide report feeling underprepared to counsel patients on opioid use. And as providers try to catch up and government agencies weigh how best to respond, many schools are stocking overdose reversal medications as recently recommended by the Biden administration, and are working to teach students and families about the dangers. And so when we talk about the opioid crisis in this country, we're also talking about a crisis among our young people. And speaking of crises, we know that a big survey asked Americans about their finances, and take a listen to some of the trouble spots that we're hearing. NPR is reporting that Americans are overwhelmingly saying that they're doing at least okay financially, but most remain worried about rising prices. And in 1 in 6 say they have bills that they can't pay. That's what the Federal Reserve said earlier this week. Now, each year, the Fed surveys thousands of people about their household finances, including income, saving, and expenses. And this year's snapshot shows that family budgets generally held steady over the last year or so, but they're not as solid as they were 2 years ago, when pandemic relief payments helped people pad their bank accounts and inflation was just beginning to take hold. The survey conducted last fall found that 72% of adults are living comfortably financially, or at least doing okay. That's down from 73% in 2022 and 78% in 2021. Now, can you guess what one of the most significant expenses is? It's childcare. One group that saw a bigger drop in well-being was parents. Just 64% of those with children under the age of 18 said they were doing at least okay. That's down from 75% in 2021. You see, childcare is a significant expense for many families, often costing at least half as much as their housing. Yikes. The median monthly cost for childcare was $800 or $1,100 for those using more than 20 hours a week. And about a third of those surveyed said that their monthly income had increased during the year, while a slightly higher percentage, 38%, said that their monthly expenses had grown. We know that 2 in 3 Americans say that inflation has made their finances worse. No surprise there. 1 in 3 Americans couldn't cover a $400 surprise expense. And double-digit price increases in home insurance are also part of this. This year's report included a new question about home insurance, which has seen a double-digit price increase in the last year. And while the vast majority of homeowners have insurance, some of the most vulnerable people do not, including more than 20% of low-income families in the South. We're going to come back to this when we get to the quiet part out loud. But when we come forward, you don't want to miss Mayor Keith Benjamin. He's the White House Director of Public Engagement, and he has a big announcement from the Biden administration today. If you are concerned about equal justice under the law, you don't want to miss what he has to say. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
A safe place to go loud. A great place for progressive politics. KBLA Talk 1580.
Tyreek Wayne, here's the latest on the Black Information Network. Family, friends, and colleagues of the late Cook County, Illinois clerk Karen Yarborough continue to remember her time in office. A special meeting of County Board Commissioners was held to honor the longtime politician. Mayor Brandon Johnson was among the speakers. New York City Mayor Eric Adams, who's Black, is criticizing pro-Palestinian protesters while defending police for arresting demonstrators in Brooklyn over the weekend. Adams says protesters blocked traffic, climbed on top of a bus, and spit at police officers in Bay Ridge. Video shows officers shoving protesters towards the sidewalks, dragging others, and punching several demonstrators while taking them into custody. President Biden is urging Black voters to show up at the polls in November. He spoke to the Detroit branch of the NAACP's Fight for Freedom Fund dinner and was given a Lifetime Achievement Award from the group. Biden addressed concerns about being 81 years old and said he feels pretty inspired. That's the latest. I'm Tyreek Wayne on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network.
Every business faces challenges, but shipping shouldn't be one of them. Turn shipping to your advantage with USPS Ground Advantage from the United States Postal Service. Learn how at USPS.com/advantage. USPS Ground Advantage. Simple, affordable, reliable.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Rams are moving their training camp this summer to the campus of Loyola Marymount University. The Rams had trained at UC Irvine since 2016. The Chargers will also have a new home this summer for training camp. They'll be at a new facility in El Segundo. The Chargers decided to move from Costa Mesa. 5 NFL teams will be conducting their training camp this summer in Southern California. In addition to the Chargers and Rams, the Raiders, New Orleans Saints, and Dallas Cowboys will be in the area for training camp. The NBA Western Conference Finals begins tonight in Minneapolis. The Timberwolves versus the Dallas Mavericks. First time for the T-Wolves in the Western Conference Finals in 20 years. The Mavericks were in the conference finals in 2022 against Golden State. They lost to Golden State in 5 games. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Salutations, kinfolk and family. It's Flink Johnson. Los Angeles is known for some of the greatest tacos in the world, but none better than the Original Taco Pete. Visit them online at originaltacopete.com or check them out at 3272 Slauson Avenue near the corner of Slauson and Crenshaw, or 2251 Rosecrans Avenue, or you can always have Grubhub, DoorDash, or Uber Eats delivered. Original Taco Pete, home of the Black Taco. Black owned for over 35 years and 4 generations.
Heard any other talk radio lately that sounds anything like this? We didn't think so. You're listening to Unapologetically Progressive, KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and delighted to welcome back to the show former Columbia, South Carolina Mayor, current Director of the White House Office of Public Engagement, Steve Benjamin. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we're pleased to have you here, and we're pleased to make sure that we're providing our leaders, listeners, and audience with information from the source. And you have reached a pretty major milestone. The Biden-Harris administration had a major milestone. Anybody paying attention to the role that judges are playing in terms of shaping our everyday life, better listen up because you have a big announcement to share. The president just released a statement. Steve Benjamin, tell us, what's the announcement?
The announcement is 200. Today, we reached another milestone in the effort to protect the freedoms and liberties of all Americans. The president announced the confirmation of his 200th federal judge since he took office. I mean, this is obviously, you have to just turn on the TV right now and see the important role that judges and the diverse judiciary are having on this great republic in which we live. The president really had some very basic qualifications. He wanted exceptionally high qualified men and women with great and diverse experiences to seats on the bench, and they had to display the principles at the core of our democracy, the dedication to those principles, which are independence, freedom, and liberty. We're so excited that this group of judges, 200 of them, are 64% of them are women, and that 62% of them are people of color, including obviously the first Black woman ever confirmed to the Supreme Court in Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. More Black women appointed to the Circuit Court than every other president in the history of the country combined. More Hispanic judges appointed to the Circuit Court than any other individual administration. More Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander judges appointed than any other individual administration. But even more importantly, these judges come from a diverse set of backgrounds that include civil rights lawyers, public defenders, those who've been defending the rights of men and women to organize unions and collectively bargain. I mean, this is a really solid group of individuals who will, for the next generation, shape our judiciary. And the president's really proud of what they represent, and certainly this milestone number of 200 new judges.
I mean, this is a major milestone, and I just want to double click on how this compares to previous administrations who certainly have mounted a very valiant effort, but in some cases, the president has appointed more women, more folks of color than a number of administrations combined, no?
The president has appointed, and I will double click that, has appointed more Black women to the courts of appeals, which is one level below the Supreme Court, than every other president in the history of the country combined. I mean, so if you want to understand his commitment to making sure that highly qualified, diverse candidates reach the bench, he's appointed more than 5 times the number of Black judges that Donald Trump appointed. He's appointed more than 4 times the number of Hispanic judges than Donald Trump appointed as well. So he's demonstrated a real commitment to shaping the future of the judiciary and making sure, again, that people who are willing to be thoughtful, who are exceptionally well qualified, but who are willing to be thoughtful, who understand the very particular role that judiciary plays in protecting the 4 corners of this republic, that we have highly qualified, diverse judges there. And so, yes, he is indeed without peer in this regard.
And really, one of the things that stood out to me from this announcement just today is that this is a president that has not shied away from embracing historic first, from Vice President Harris to, as you mentioned, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. But I just want to lift up some of the names of these folks that are also historic first. The Nancy Abudu, who's the first Black woman to serve on the 11th Circuit. For people who don't know, that includes Alabama, Florida, and Georgia. Dana Douglas, the first Black woman to serve on the 5th Circuit. For people who don't know, that includes Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas. Ariana Freeman, the first Black woman to serve on the 3rd Circuit. For people who don't know, that's Delaware, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. And Stephanie Davis, the first Black woman to serve on the Michigan seat for the 6th Circuit. That includes Kentucky, Michigan, Ohio, and Tennessee. And so from sea to shining sea, we are seeing more folks of color, more Black folks, more women, more Black women in these roles. Talk to us a little bit about what the president's vision is in terms of his legacy with the courts. We know the courts will play an outsized role in the freedoms that so many of us hold dear, but privately, how does President Biden think of this part of the work as a part of his lasting legacy?
Well, The president realizes that judges matter. They're fundamental. They're critical to protecting our fundamental freedoms, whether it's a woman's right to bodily autonomy and making her own reproductive healthcare choices, if it's protecting that vital franchise, the right to vote and to participate in elections that our ancestors fought so hard for and are under attack all across this country, or if it's fighting to protect the right to unionize and collectively bargain. Again, something that's central and sacrosanct to who he is as a public servant and public official over the course of his career, making sure that we have highly qualified judges who have not only a background of experiences that show that they can call strikes and balls, that they can adhere to the Constitution, they can protect fundamental human rights, they can really think deeply about how children have access to clean water and clean air. These are things that the president, because of his long tenure and service in the Senate in particular, understands are critical, that judges now, probably more than any time in recent history, are on the front line sometimes because of a rather litigious environment coming after some of these fundamental freedoms. And he wants to make sure he has the very best, most highly qualified people with a diverse set of experiences there on the bench to consider these major issues.
That's right. And so for all of our leaders, learners, and listeners who get so wound up about news coming out of whether it's the Supreme Court or some of the district courts across the country, they should know that this action by the Biden-Harris administration, this 200th milestone, is the best effort to try and balance out some of these decisions that we have had to endure coming down from the courts. Mayor Benjamin, the Biden-Harris administration also making more news today with the Biden administration canceling an additional $7.7 billion in student loan debt. Tell us about the latest on that front.
Yeah, I tell you what, I always think of the old song, "Can't Stop, Won't Stop." The president has really made a commitment to making sure that the burden of student loan debt that applies to millions of Americans and the challenges that they face in housing affordability, buying homes and living life to the best of their God-given potential. They've really been straddled with debt and many times unfair debt. This additional announcement takes the total amount of student debt relief up to $167 billion, affecting 4.5 million borrowers across this country. So today's announcement, another 160,000 individuals are qualifying for another $7.7 billion of student debt relief. It's a really big deal. I come across men and women weekly who tell me that not only has their debt been relieved, but the impact it has on their life, either their ability to buy a home for the first time, their ability to invest in their children, the children's futures, their ability to start businesses and create wealth and prayerfully generational wealth. It's a very big deal. And obviously, we know the courts stood in the way of the president doing his initial plan out the gate, but he has insisted that he's going to use every single tool within his power and inside his cabinet to continue to make sure that people have a true and real opportunity to participate in the American economic mainstream. And today is another example of the president's commitment to making that real in the lives of everyday Americans. And we're very proud of this accomplishment.
Well, I know there are a number of folks that I know who have benefited from the student debt relief, family in Norfolk, Virginia, friends in California, and everywhere in between. I've encouraged people to share their story with the White House because I don't think we hear these real people stories enough. People who, to your point earlier, generational wealth becomes more attainable, because of actions like this. And so for the people that aren't sure whether or not they're one of these folks impacted, where should they go? Where should they look to see if perhaps they're the beneficiary of this debt relief?
Sure, I would definitely encourage people to go to the Department of Education's website, U.S. Department of Education. There are a number of different plans and programs that might apply to either debt forgiveness or significantly reducing the amount of payments that you owe. But the Department of Ed's website is the place to go. And one other point that the Vice President is always really clear about raising, which she's out doing her amazing economic empowerment tour, is that debt relief does not only apply to those who have finished school. So you can have started school, maybe not made it all the way through, and you still very well may qualify for debt relief. So I don't want people thinking I've had to have my bachelor's degree, my master's degree, my PhD to potentially qualify for student debt relief. Go to the Department of Education's website and see if, which one of these programs apply to you, and make sure that that you pursue any relief that you qualify for right now.
Our thanks to White House Director of Public Engagement and one of our favorite recurring guests. Keep coming on. Former Columbia, South Carolina Mayor Steve Benjamin. Thank you for joining us.
All right, Nii-Quartelai, thank you so much, Doc. You be well.
That's right. You've been listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
The station you turn to when you've had it up to here with cultural incompetence. KBLA Talk 1580.
City of Los Angeles, tenants and landlords participating in the Emergency Renters Assistance Program, beware of scammers. Notifications about your application will only come from the City of LA in emails ending in lacity.org. Protect yourself. Contact the LA Housing Department by email at lahd.erap@lacity.org or call 866-557-7368 to check communications you receive about the program. You can also verify your application status at housing.lacity.org. That's housing.lacity.org.
Every day, millions face challenges that go unseen. Mental health issues affect not just individuals, but the relationships that matter most to them. Over 80% of those suffering with mental health conditions acknowledge the strain on their families. Parents grappling with depression or anxiety find even simple tasks overwhelming. At work, challenges can lead to communication breakdowns, jeopardizing careers and professional relationships. For those caring for loved ones, burnout is a stark reality. The weight of caregiving responsibilities can feel insurmountable. Children, too, feel this impact, often taking on more at home, sacrificing schoolwork and time with friends. But there's hope. Seeking support can change lives. This Mental Health Awareness Month, let's heal the relationships that matter most to us. It's okay to pray and get help. Visit normalizehelp.org for more information and resources.
We used to argue about whose turn it was to clean the gutters, but then I had leaf filter gutter protection installed.
Wait, I told you Leaf Filter had free inspections and estimates and a lifetime guarantee.
Meaning we never have to argue about whose turn it is to clean the gutters again.
But I visited leaffilter.com/beacon first.
No, I did.
It doesn't matter who. Visit leaffilter.com/beacon to schedule your free gutter inspection and get up to 30% off today.
See representative for warranty details. Promotion is 20% off plus a 10% senior or military discount. One discount per household.
When you use Bounce dryer sheets and your clothes look amazing, it's the sheet. Less static in your life? Yeah, it's the sheet. Smelling fresher than ever? It's the sheet. Oh, so soft fabric? Ooh la la. It's the sheet. Less wrinkles on your clothes? You know it's the sheet. Bounce dryer sheets. More freshness, more softness. Less static, less wrinkles. It's the sheet.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate loses and love wins.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey. And before we get to the quiet part out loud, I just want to share a little bit of breaking news that is coming in. According to USA Today, the CDC is reporting that a second human has been infected with the bird flu from the U.S. dairy cows. Health officials identified the avian influenza case in a Michigan dairy farm worker. This is the second time a case has developed in a person working with dairy cows. The virus appears to have developed under similar circumstances as it did earlier this year from a farm worker at a dairy in Texas. A nasal swab for the infected person tested negative for influenza. However, an eye swab from the patient tested positive for bird flu, indicating an eye infection. That's according to a release from the CDC. The infected person in the Texas case also showed only eye symptoms. And although the two cases happened in a relatively short period, officials at the CDC said that the new case doesn't change their assessment that the risk to human health remains low. And so, listen, as folks are, driving home or watching or reading the news tonight, chances are you're going to see this headline. And according to the CDC, there's no reason to freak out. I know so many of us see headlines like that, and we think about the early days of COVID. Remember those one or two cases that popped up? I think that first case might have been in Washington State. Then there was another state where they popped up. And so I know this headline could be a little triggering for people, but based on what the CDC said and what the USA Today reported, the assessment of the CDC still has not changed. And so we will continue to keep you posted as more information becomes available. But that is the latest that is hot off the press. But in other news, back to the quiet part out loud, where there is a hidden threat that may be hiding in plain sight. Fast rising seas could swamp septic systems, particularly in parts of the South. The Washington Post is reporting on this sort of nightmare scenario for a number of our fellow Americans who particularly live in the South. On the worst days, when the backyard would flood and the toilets would gurgle and the smell of sewage hung thick in the air, folks like Monica Arenas would flee to her mother-in-law's home to use the bathroom or wash laundry. She worried about what pathogens might lurk in the tainted water, what it might cost to fix the persistent problems, and whether the ever-present anxiety would ever subside. Millions of folks are looking at the same challenge. For all the obvious challenges facing places like South Florida, which is at sea level, one serious threat to public health and the environment remains largely out of sight, but everywhere. And when I saw this, I thought, I didn't even think about septic tanks and what issue that may pose to locals in places like South Florida. You see, millions of them, they head to the American South, which is a region that's grappling with some of the planet's fastest rising seas. And at more than a dozen tide gauges from Texas to North Carolina, sea levels have risen at least 6 inches since 2010. This is a change similar to what occurred over the previous 5 decades. And so you all know KBLA's commitment to addressing climate change in a real way. Well, this is a real life example of the effects of climate change. And they are playing out in ways that are impacting our fellow Americans in the South. And, one major danger that maybe, isn't on everybody's radar, certainly wasn't on mine. So, well, what happens to those septic tanks out there? I mean, have you ever stopped and thought about how rising water threatens septic tanks? I've never thought about it. Apparently, an estimated 120,000 septic systems remain in Miami-Dade County. Their subterranean concrete boxes and drain fields are a relic of the area's feverish growth generations ago. And of those, the county estimated in 2018, about half are at risk of being periodically compromised during severe storms or particularly wet years. Miami, where the seas have risen 6 inches, as I mentioned earlier, since 2010, Miami offers a high-profile example of a predicament that part of the Southeast Atlantic and Gulf Coast are confronting, and one that scientists say will become only more pervasive as waters continue to rise. And so folks can turn away around issues related to climate change, but you do so at your own peril. You do so as a disservice to our fellow Americans. Expensive repairs afflict homeowners everywhere, particularly those homeowners, when it comes to septic system failures. These system failures can get pretty gross pretty quick. You see, fetid water increases the risk of gastrointestinal diseases and other health hazards as floodwaters fill yards and streets, and profound worry persists about the environmental toll, which researchers in Miami say means submerged septic tanks are leaking nutrients into the porous limestone, potentially fueling algae bloom that kill fish. So you see how this connects the dots? It's not just about, oh my gosh, the inconvenience of septic tanks being submerged and sort of the messiness of that and the putrid smell and all that. It's not just about that. That stuff only scratches the surface, but it is how it affects the whole ecosystem. And by the way, there are plenty of goods and services, and there's plenty of agriculture that we rely on from this part of the country. And so if suddenly this challenge with the septic tanks begins to interrupt our food system, we may have a bigger problem. Say that out loud. In fact, say it a little bit louder for the people in the back. That is the quiet part out loud. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward.
The quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580.
With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history of decisions. Kind of like choosing Derek Jeter as the pinch hitter for your baseball team.
Jeter, you're in. We need a home run.
I'll give it a try. I've swung a bat once or twice.
That's out of here.
Yep, even easier than that. With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, is it even a decision? That's banking reimagined. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One NA, member FDIC.
It's time to get ready for summer at Macy's Memorial Day sale. Save on great specials for more time in the sun, like 40% off women's swim and cover-ups, and 30 to 40% off sandals, handbags, and more. Level up your cookout game with 50 to 60% off cookware and grilling accessories. Plus, Macy's Star Rewards members can earn rewards even faster during Star Money bonus days. See Macy's.com/Star Rewards. Today at Macy's. Savings off sale and clearance prices. Exclusions apply.
Yeah. The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment. LA's 99 neighborhood councils form the grassroots level of the Los Angeles city government. The system was created to connect LA's diverse communities to City Hall. While neighborhood council board members are volunteers, they are also public officials elected to office by the members of their community. Neighborhood councils advocate on issues like homelessness, housing, land use, emergency preparedness, public safety, parks, transportation, and sustainability. They also provide local expertise on the delivery of city services to their various communities. Neighborhood councils are open to participation by anyone who is a part of the fabric of daily life in said community. This includes those who live, work, or own property or a business. If you are interested in stepping up to join your local neighborhood council, visit www.empowerla.org. That's empowerla.org. It's time to think globally, but act locally. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Find a righteous rage and don't be afraid to say what you see. We're KBLA Talk 1580.
And you are listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey. And let me finish with this. If you are out there and you have a good idea that might be what we need to change the world, maybe a bold solution to a big problem, then you should know about the MacArthur Foundation, because they want bold solutions to big problems, and the prize is $100 million. Any major challenge in any field, anywhere in the world, that's what the MacArthur Foundation is looking to solve with its third round of 100 and change, a $100 million grant competition for proposals that tackle, it says, one of the world's most critical social challenges. The first two winners were a collaboration between Sesame Workshop and the International Rescue Committee for their work helping children affected by conflict and crisis in the Middle East, and Community Solutions for a program aiming to end homelessness in 75 U.S. communities within 5 years. The finalists for the 100 and change competition will be announced in spring of 2025, and we would love to have one of our leaders, learners, and listeners on as a winner of this competition. And so go to the MacArthur Foundation website for more information. But look, we're always about that change here. And I hope that somebody listening is able to get the resources to be able to advance that change. We'll have to leave it there. My thanks to the Village that helps us produce A More Perfect Union each and every day. Our executive producer, Tavis Smiley, our sound engineer extraordinaire, Miles Lowe, our show producer, Robert Battles, and our podcast publishing guru, Odell Bodie. Remember, don't panic, organize. Do what you can from where you are with what you have. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and you've been listening to A More Perfect Union.